pressed it multiple times. There we go.
Oh my gosh, hey.
Finally. Okay, good. I'm glad that worked because I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram.
Yeah, no, I understand. I've only been on live a couple times with other people,
Yeah,
and each time I'm like, okay, so what happens
right,
next?
right.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we finally got to do this. I feel like you and I had talked about going live with each other like years ago. That could have been
Oh,
somebody else
okay.
though. There's so many other I'm so glad there's so many other Black creators who are making their posts about ADHD. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really cool. I'm trying to think. So I've been invited to speak about like ADHD on another podcast, but not like an ADHD page. So I'm just really excited that we are connected and on here.
Yeah,
So nice
very
to
cool. Very cool. I'm Jasmine and this is
Kira.
Hi Takira. We're here to talk to you today about how food affects ADHD. I made a post about good ADHD friendly meals, and I asked a couple of people what sort of ADHD friendly meals that they enjoy. And Takira was kind enough to suggest we go live. So I thought that would be a good subject that we talk about today. I'm looking forward to it.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna say one thing about me. So just a little bit of background just to get us started, actually. So I am the busy bee with ADHD, and I got my ADHD diagnosis like during the pandemic, which is I think a lot of people did when they realized like, hey,
Yeah,
here a lot
something's not quite right.
really hard. And so basically, kind of how I started my blog, is basically based off like food and travel, because like those are two things that I love a lot. So food is naturally a topic that I gravitate toward, but especially like how food interacts with ADHD, and what that experience is like has been a journey. And I'm sure you've probably been on your own food journey as somebody with ADHD.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that we can just kind of like unravel what some of that looks like,
Yes,
with
certainly.
food and ADHD and also medication. So
Yes, yes. I think medication, if that's what you decide to do, is really helpful to figure out how non-stimulants and stimulants react with food because they do have different sort of
hmm
reactions. And for me, my name is Hyperactive Jazz on most of my social medias. I have been on Instagram and I have been on TikTok. I think the most successful now is YouTube. I make short form videos that explain how that show what living with ADHD is like and how to manage it. So it's more like a lifestyle sort of thing. I really enjoy making those videos. My shorts do pretty well, where I just give small snippets of information to help people manage with ADHD and truly show what the experience is like. But I do, and I have a script for a video where it answers the question how stimulants or what's the difference between stimulants and non-stimulants to treat ADHD. Um, but food is a big deal for me. At the moment, I'm in one of the disordered eating stages where I kind of wake up and I immediately want not necessarily healthy foods, so like sugars and all of that stuff.
hmm
So I asked the question about ADHD and food to see if the community could help me out.
hmm hmm
But the first thing I wanted to start with is who we are. I'm glad that you're here with us today. And then our experience with disordered eating. Is that something you're familiar with?
So not too familiar. So I know a little bit about disordered eating and just in general, like being someone with ADHD, there's a lot of things we do that are disordered. So maybe you could take the lead on that and I can
Sure.
chime in. Yeah.
Sure. So disordered eating for me is not the same as ED because ED is obviously a disorder, whereas disordered eating is you might eat one day and not eat the other day, or you might eat breakfast and lunch and not eat dinner, sort of thing. It depends on how ADHD affects your daily life. So I spend a lot of time in hyperfocus because whenever I like something, I really enjoy it and I can do it for hours at a time. And that cuts into my meals, it cuts into drinking water, exercising, and normal day to day life. So today, the thing I had for breakfast was ice cream.
I love
And
that.
then like since then I've just been eating like chips and Cheez-Its and things like that, not necessarily a full course meal, which is really important for the ADHD brain because our brains need nutrition in order to function better. Not necessarily 100%. There isn't any way to cure ADHD as it is a neurological brain disorder, but food certainly help to make sure that you're eating enough proteins, to make sure you're eating enough nutrients in order to keep your brain moving. So disordered eating, the definition would really just be when you don't eat regularly,
Mm-hmm.
usually because of some symptom of ADHD. So you might forget, you might be in hyper focus, you might be so busy, you don't feel hungry, like your brain doesn't tell you that you're hungry. That's an experience that I have pretty often.
No, and I'm so glad you broke that down because I think my husband has that and we think he has undiagnosed ADHD. But basically, like, I live my whole life around food. So I'm like, when people tell me that they don't eat or like they don't wake up thinking about like just what to eat, I'm like,
Yeah,
how? Because even so, so I have my moments like when I'm hyper focused and then like typically the things that I forget to do. Well, okay, yeah, sometimes I will forget to eat. But I will not go to the bathroom for a long time.
if you don't eat.
Well, so if I'm hyper focused,
Oh, you
I
mean
won't,
you hold
yeah,
it?
I'll hold it
Oh,
all day.
wow.
And I used to get UTIs a
Wow.
lot because
Oh,
I would be like so in the zone and I hate using the bathroom. I don't know what, it's probably an ADHD thing, but I'm like, I don't want to do it. I have to get up and stop what I'm doing and I'm going to
yeah.
get distracted. I'm just like, I can't do it. And so when it comes to like forgetting to do something because of hyper focus and ADHD, it's usually the bathroom. But like literally as soon as I step away from my desk or whatever it is I'm working on or like going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, I
You
need to move.
immediately have to, yeah, you immediately have to
Yeah.
go.
So I think that's a really good point. So before we kind of get into like what some different things are that each of us deal with disordered eating, curious, do you are you a breakfast person?
I get nauseous in the morning, so I can't eat before 10 o'clock or else I'll be really sick. I don't even the thought of eating before 10 o'clock makes me nauseous.
That's
But
fair.
yeah, so when people ask that question, I used to think, oh, do you like breakfast foods? I love breakfast foods,
Mhm.
but I would have to wait until my body tells me I'm ready to eat in order to do that.
Okay.
So 10 o'clock is about the time that my body is like, okay, we can tolerate food.
Okay. No, that's fair. So basically, I have something similar. I don't get nauseous when I think about food, but like I literally can't eat first thing in the morning. Especially because like the type of work I do, sometimes we have like conferences and things like that, and they'll have breakfast at like 7 a.m. And I'm like, who is eating this early? Like
No,
even if I woke up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., I still can't eat until a certain time. I don't know what it is about. I guess maybe it has something to do with our circadian rhythm and sleep
probably,
cycles and our just
probably.
but no, that's very valid. And I know one thing that has worked for me is intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Um, and so if you haven't looked into that, that might be something to consider. But I could definitely just tell you a little bit about
Yeah,
how
please
I.
do.
So um, just gonna go ahead and throw this out there. I'm not a nutritionist, not a
Oh,
dietitian.
neither of us are.
Um, yeah, exactly. I was gonna say I can tell you what works for me. All the people watching, I'll do what works for you, and talk to a professional. Because all that me and Jazz are professionally cute. So
I love
there's
that.
that. But basically, one thing to note is women cannot fast as long as men can because it can mess up our hormones and like our cycle and all types of things like that. So, one thing I do tell people to be super cautious about if they're thinking about trying intermittent fasting is look up like what are the recommended hours of fasting
Mhm.
versus eating for women versus men because it's different. Um, but for me, like most days, I break fast, which is what breakfast really
Right,
is. You're breaking your fast
right.
between 10:30 a.m. and 11 a.m.
Okay.
And I stop eating around 8 p.m. Like I don't eat anything after that. Like even if I have a late night, like sometimes I do go a little longer and maybe I'll have my last thing at like 9 or 9:30. But really, intermittent fasting is one of the things that has helped me a lot with my disordered eating because so I used to do like all-nighters and things like that, especially in college. And when you don't have a lot of sleep, the first thing your body craves is junk. And so traditional American breakfast foods look like pancakes, maybe, you know, sweet things that are really dessert if you think about it. And so
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I think intermittent fasting has helped me with is I'm not waking up in the morning and making decisions right then and right there about what I'm going to eat.
Right.
Even if I'm planning out my food for the day, like let's say I'm packing my lunch bag for work or something, I'm still not going to eat that food until 3+ hours later.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps me have more clarity about what I'm going to eat in the morning, but also what I'm going to eat throughout the day. Because let's say I do want to have pancakes for breakfast or something. Well, maybe for lunch, I should have something with a lot more
Right.
protein to stay balanced.
Right.
And just doing intermittent fasting has definitely helped me make conscious decisions about
Yes.
food because I'm not waking up and thinking food, food, food. So that's one thing that has worked for me. So I'm curious if you would ever try that, but if you do, I'm curious about how that might go for you too.
It's always, when I think of intermittent fasting, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite form of dieting or eating. But I will do it anyway because I will go hours without eating. So it's not something that's going to be difficult, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the conscious part is where I would have the most issue because when my body isn't telling me that I'm hungry, which during the summertime is more than like during the wintertime. During the wintertime, I can eat and eat and eat. During the summertime, and I think it has to do with the heat's effect on just my body in general, I simply don't have an appetite until I'm standing up and losing balance because my brain hasn't gotten enough food, that sort of thing. But same. So like the schedule generally is 10 o'clock. I can't eat before 10 o'clock because I'll be nauseous.
Mm-hmm.
But and then so you eat between 10 and 11:30.
So basically, most days I eat between 10:30 a.m. Like that's my start time, and then I stop at like 8 at the latest usually.
p.m.
So I'm not good at math, but that's
10
about
hours.
10
It's a
hours
little less
pretty
than 10
much.
hours.
So basically that means the other 14 hours of the day I'm fasting.
Okay.
Um,
Which
and
is like 8 of those hours you're asleep anyway.
exactly. So it's
Right.
like not even a hard thing, which so one thing about like eating on time is I did work with a nutritionist at one point who told me to stabilize your blood sugar, you should eat every 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
So in the very beginning, because I was like, how am I supposed to do that? Or like, if I eat this big meal, and what if I'm not hungry, you know?
Right.
So I would set a timer on my phone, well, different alarms. So it would be like 10 o'clock, and then 1 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock. And so even if I like didn't feel like eating, I would just take one bite of something just to say I did it, you know?
Yeah.
Because one bite of, you know, let's say an avocado or like some toast with like cheese on it, because I love cheese. That's the whole thing. But like one bite of something is better than no bites of anything.
Right. 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 Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's not a terrible thing, and I have thought about it in the past. I just never implemented it.
Mm-hmm.
The largest thing for me with disordered eating is that, well, one, because it's disordered, I typically am hungry when I'm starving. Like I will miss the cues that say, "Hey, T, Sisters with ADHD is in here. It's nice to see you, T." So one thing I have an issue with is my body telling me when I'm hungry, except at that moment where I'm like, I can't do anything else except eat. That's one of the issues that I have. And what has helped with that for me is having snacks throughout the day, which would be good for eating every 3 hours. So it's not like a huge meal every 3 hours. It is something small. So in the morning I will typically do like toast and cream cheese with some fruit. And then in the afternoon, if I remember to eat, it's generally a sandwich. And then in the evening, it's a larger meal,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like should be like the opposite. Like your lunch should be the largest meal and then your dinner should be a smaller meal. Hey!
Who's got that hazel?
um, but that's typically that would be the ideal way of eating for me. I'm a huge advocate for snacking throughout the day. I will always have something with me in order to fill the tank because, like you said, it's much better to have one bite of something than no bites of nothing of anything. Yeah. Um, so that's basically how I do my best. That's basically what has helped me to make sure I eat, just to be carrying something, on me at all times.
Yeah.
And I encourage anybody to do that. But I'm not opposed to intermittent fasting. It just has to do with setting that timer. That's a good way to remind myself to eat. And then the transitioning from one thing to another. So like, if it turns out that I am doing something I'm focused on, like it's easy for me to remember to eat when I'm at work. Like I just got a job at a eyeglass place at America's Best.
Oh, cool.
But for the last couple of months, I haven't been working. So like I can be doing anything for a number of hours and just forget about what my body needs. Whereas with work, I have more of a structured schedule. So I know I'm getting in at this time. I'm going to take a break at this time, which means I can have a snack and then I have my lunch and then another break and then I'm done. Mm-hmm. Like having that sort of structure is very helpful. Setting timers, creating a structure for your brain, and eating the right foods. Mm-hmm. Eating the right foods is important.
Yeah, actually, so what you just said, really like it does make a huge impact. Like having a routine, like for example, you said you weren't working for a little bit. Like that is one of the things I struggle with so much when I graduated from college. I was like, when do people eat? What do they eat? Because I was used to like, even if you didn't have like a meal plan, like we have eateries on campus,
Mm-hmm.
you have friends who eat at certain times, so you just eat on their
Right.
schedule. But I really couldn't figure out like what is a good time for me to eat. And then I couldn't figure out what I should eat because I knew what I liked to eat and it was junk.
Yeah.
And so basically I got to work with a nutritionist and I'm really grateful for it. And she helped me figure out some convenience foods that are actually healthy. And the good thing was she helped me figure out like non-perishables because I am on the road a lot. And I have an hour commute to work. And I'm like, what if I'm in the car and I'm hungry? Like, what can I keep on me? Because it's one thing to say, oh, carry an apple, carry, whatever. But I'm like, first of all, that apple is going to get dented up in my book bag and I'm not going to eat it anymore. And then I don't even like to eat the apple like straight up. I like to slice my apple and have little pieces because I don't like wet things. Like there's so many like things about ADHD that can make you not want to eat healthy, right. Especially if you're like me and you don't like leftovers.
Oh, really?
I've had to learn to like leftovers. And one of the things I realized that I didn't like about leftovers is in the bowl or whatever you put your leftovers in and you put in the fridge, there's condensation. And my hands would get wet taking the leftovers out.
So your sensory issues are that sensitive.
Yeah,
wow.
like I'm really sensitive to touch. There's a laundry list of things I'm sensitive about.
Me too. So, but it affects different things. Like with food, I don't think about the condensation in the bowl, but I don't like the texture of mushy foods, and I don't like wet fruit. You know how people really like fruit cakes, and it's mushy. Not my thing. So, but I also have issues with water on my skin. So like I would prefer a bath over a shower because a shower is like tedious and it's not a consistent. Yes.
No.
It's
no, I am team shower because one thing can fall in the bathtub and then I feel like it's on my whole body. Like it could be my own hair. And I'm like, ew, I have to get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Everybody has their own things. Everyone will experience some sort of sensory issues, but it's going to affect you differently.
Exactly.
So back to the foods. So what did you and your nutritionist talk about that got you back on track for your eating?
So basically, I learned to look at food and think about what is the primary source of like calories or anything coming from, right? So I'm like, is this food primarily a protein? Is this food or like sometimes even salads, like is this thing that I'm eating primarily protein? Is it primarily fat, or is it primarily carbs? And
Mm.
what helps me stay balanced, because one thing about carbs is they give you quick energy, but it doesn't hold long. So if you struggle with disordered eating, and you have like, so when you start to feel bad because you haven't eaten, you will feel your drug sugar dropping, and that's what tends to make people feel like they're gonna fall or faint, or even sometimes like vomit, because you literally feel sick
Mm-hmm.
because your blood sugar is falling down. So
Mm-hmm.
in any given meal, I prioritize my proteins and fats, because I'm always gonna have carbs in there, because like that's what vegetables and fruit are anyway,
Right.
or even rice or potatoes or anything like that. Like that's a given for any meal for me, because I'm gonna make sure I have that stuff. So I'm like, how many proteins am I eating, and how many, like how much fat? Because if I'm gonna have fat, is it healthy fat? Like that's a whole debate. But basically, I learned to keep things on me, and like in my lunch bag or my book bag. So like I tend to keep nuts on me like at all times, or either in like a nut butter, like cashew butter, almond butter, peanut butter. um I went through like a jerky craze, which jerky can be high in salt and fat. So like you have to be careful. Like maybe turkey jerky might be better. I don't like it. But that's, jerky was a really good source of protein for me. And then like I keep tuna packs with me all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I keep a little, the little Pyrex bowls, the glass bowls. I keep those on me typically. And so I eat basically almost the same thing every day, and routine helps. So for breakfast, I'm going to have fruit with some fat. So that's going to probably be an apple with some peanut butter, or some grapes with cheese, like literally. So I have my fruit and my fat. That's what helps my brain go. Because I've noticed I can't have too many carbs in the morning, because then I'm just like not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Um, and then, so I'll have my apple in that little Pyrex bowl with my peanut butter. And literally, when it's time for lunch, I clean out that bowl. I put my tuna in there. I put some cheese on top. I want something crunchy because I love a crunch. I'm putting some crushed tortilla chips on there. And maybe like, I love to put like honey mustard or something on my tuna. It just feels so good. And I mix it up and I eat it. And in that meal, I've already had my protein, my fats, and my carbs, right? And then literally, I have a late afternoon snack, which is great because I start to crash around like 2 or 3 o'clock anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it tends to be a little bit of caffeine because I'm not medicated. So I have my caffeine, and then I have like, that's when I usually do something fun. Like if I
In the
have like,
afternoon.
yeah. So like
Mm-hmm.
if I have like so I do sugar-free chocolate pudding cups because they're so good, and it tastes kind of like candy if you think about it.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll do like something fun with it, and then I'll still have something like I should have with it, which might be like nuts or something. And
Mm-hmm.
then like literally by dinner, I'm like, okay, have I had fruits today? Have I had vegetables today? I usually have my fruit in the morning. Let's make sure I get some more veggies in before I go to bed at night. And I literally do the whole thing over and over again. So I encourage people who are trying to figure out food, especially like brain food for ADHD, to think about what you can throw in a bag and go. Because I learned also for me that the more I have to prep something, or the more I have to cook something, the less likely I am to eat healthy.
That's
So,
what my
mhm,
problem is. I hate cooking. If it takes more than 20 or 30 minutes to do, I'm not even going to eat.
mhm,
I'm just like, I will talk myself out of it. And sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's not. But the hugest thing is messing up my kitchen, first of all, like making a mess in the kitchen and having to clean it up. But
mhm,
then also the process it takes in order to get a good meal.
mhm,
So usually I do have, like for lunch it'll be a cold
mhm.
sandwich. And I have those tuna packages too. For
Yeah.
a while, tuna was basically the only thing that I would eat, especially in the summertime because it's too hot to turn the oven on. You
It's
don't want
too
to do
hot.
any of that. It's too hot. It's too hot. There was a question that somebody had about binge eating. The question is, if you ever binge eat, have you found any mechanisms that help you not to do it? That's a big thing for me, especially when I feel down or sad. Thank you. I appreciate your
Mm,
question. Thank you. I do have an issue with binge eating during the wintertime because I also get depressed in the wintertime. It's less sun, although here in where I live is Colorado. There's a huge amount of sun throughout the year. Even on like snow days, we'll have a heavy snow and then the sun will come out and everything will melt. So with binge eating, it really, for me, it would be, I changed what it is that I eat. So you want to automatically go with the sugary, high fat foods that may not necessarily be healthy for you. But if you're binge eating fruit, it might have less of a negative impact on your body than having junk food, if that makes sense. Although fruit, you'll have your carbs, you'll have your water, and you'll have your sugars with fruit. That's what I try to do, just change the type of food that I'm eating, not necessarily the amount. I don't know how to stop myself from binge eating except to make more conscious decisions about what I'm eating. So that was something that me and my therapist worked with together during the winter time, is that I have to be more conscious about what I'm eating. So I generally make a specific meal during cold seasons because it's the only meal that I will wait to eat. So like I can cook it, I can go through the whole process. It gives me good, happy memories. I love the smells and I love the flavors, and that is Tuscan soup. I love making Tuscan soup in the fall and the winter because it's easy to make, at least for me, and then I can have it for a certain amount of time before it goes bad. So I don't mind leftovers. I'll put those away and I'll eat that every day as my large meal for the day. And then in the meantime, if I do find myself binge eating, I do my best to kind of mitigate when, like to stop at a certain point. Like with people who do follow intermittent fasting, I do my best not to eat after 7 in the wintertime because I know that you do get hungry overnight. But your body should be breaking slowly, going, what is it called? Slowing down. You're kind of trying to wind down from the rest of your day so that you can get your day started the next day. So in the wintertime, I do my best not to eat past 7 o'clock. That helps with binge eating, and then changing the type of foods that I eat when I am binge eating. So you might not be able to stop the mechanism, but at least you can kind of try to mitigate your health by eating something that's a little bit healthier. And eating foods that make you full. So like I eat a lot of broccoli and I eat a lot of lettuce, and those are water foods. Watermelon is another good one too. Those are water foods, so you feel fuller even though you're eating less. Those are the 3 things I would kind of try to think about if I am on a binging streak. Oh yeah, the last thing I would say is not to buy foods that are like, make the conscious decision not to buy foods that you can easily snack on, like chips or things that have high salt and things that have high fat. Although cheese and stuff would be good for your brain; those are good, healthy brain foods. But if I lessen the amount of processed foods that I buy, that kind of levels out the binge eating. If I don't have those foods available, then I won't eat them. And those are all. It's a lot easier to say than to do. But every day you have day one. So even if you messed up yesterday, tomorrow's day one, you can start over again. Don't be discouraged by kind of feeling like you're in a relapse or kind of feeling like you failed. Just start again the next day. Also, drinking water in between your meals is really helpful with trying to stay full. Caffeine for me, I am medicated. I don't use stimulant medications. I use non-stimulant medications. And we can kind of go into how you came to deciding not to be medicated, because I don't think that's a perspective I've talked about yet. But caffeine. So I don't drink caffeine after 12. I do my best not to. There are some times, like since I've started working, I'm expending more. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm spending more time doing more work, expending a lot more energy than I did when I wasn't working. So like the other day, I asked somebody to bring me like a Coke, and it was just the boost I needed, but it did not keep me awake that evening. But I have to be careful about the amount of sugar and about the amount of caffeine that I have because of my medication. So I take non-stimulant medications, and they will keep you up if you take them after a certain amount of time. And with stimulant medications, you can do a program where you take one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and you still have a good sleeping schedule. For me, I don't take stimulant medication because I have high anxiety. And so I just fear that it'll be too much, although I'm talking with a friend of mine who just started medication for ADHD, and it is stimulant medication. So I'm trying to gauge how his response is to kind of figure out if that's something I should talk about with my therapist. But yeah, after 12 o'clock, I try not to have any caffeine. After 12 o'clock, though, I'm eating my largest meal to push me through the rest of my day. And then when I come home, eat my snacks in order to have a good evening. And then do my best to stop in the wintertime, at least by 7 o'clock. In the summertime, it's really a free-for-all. It's really just a free-for-all. But yeah. That is best because I watched this video of another ADHD creator who was like, if you are having such a hard time with your food that you're not eating anything or you're eating too much, take the steps that you need, but doing what you can to eat something is what's important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I really like how you're drawing the contrast about like your eating habits in the summer versus the cooler
Different.
because you're right. So seasonal depression is definitely a huge thing. And also just daylight and temperature can affect our bodies and how we digest things so much. Like I know for me, so I'm the same way as you, like I don't want hot food in the summer, right? Like I eat cold meals for breakfast and lunch during the summer typically. And when it's time for dinner, a lot of times I'll be like, I don't want to eat because I'm like, I don't want another cold meal, but I don't want a hot meal either. So I'm like right in between. And so one thing that I do, and this kind of goes back to the question about binge eating, because I don't struggle with binge eating, but I struggle with emotional and stress eating. And so for me, that tends to be like I want comfort foods. I want foods that just make
They're
food that give you a hug,
yes.
and those same foods just give you hugs on your hips and everywhere else you don't want them. So for me, one thing that I have learned that's worked really well for me is to only buy like certain ingredients enough for like an individual
Okay.
meal. And I feel like it's getting easier and easier to do that nowadays because I feel like a lot of the food companies are like, okay, let's make things for like college kids or like single people,
Yeah.
single serve things. So like
Yeah.
mac and cheese is a big comfort food for me. And my aunt, she actually told me this. She was like, instead of making a whole pan of it, why don't you just like do mug mac and cheese? Like the same way that people do like mug cakes. She's like, boil like a little amount of noodles and put them in there and make your mac and cheese. Or
Interesting.
you can make a big batch, right? But instead scoop out the serving size into little muffin pans. And so you can have like 3 servings or whatever for that week or however you want to like divvy it up. And then you can freeze the rest. And then when you want one
You just
serving
take that
of your
one out.
you thought you know, we use the Instapot. We love Instapot over here. But like it's one of those things where it's like finding a way to make yourself feel good as an entire person,
Mm-hmm.
because physically, like yes, we need food. Like if we don't eat, we will die. um and I would love to tell that to like the water vegetarians. Have you heard of that? Like the people, so there's like these people, my husband showed me this on YouTube. There are these people who not only are they like not vegan, like for example, they're like, we don't eat meat, we don't eat dairy, we don't eat blah blah blah. They're like, we just drink water.
No.
And I'm just like,
No.
what?
There's
But
no
there's
way they can have a
also
balanced diet like that.
exactly. But then there's also these people who like they say that water is bad. So like y'all be careful on the internet. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff up there.
There's so
But
much. There's so much.
but yeah, like it's one of those things where, you know, physically we have to take care of our bodies. So think about it on the fundamental level. And one of the things that I love that one of my art friends told me is this saying that you are your own guardian. And so no matter what that looked like for you as a kid growing up, or whatever, like you are now the parent of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If like, and this is gonna sound like kind of all weird and stuff, but I literally talk to myself like a kid. Like when I feel myself like not wanting to get out of bed or like do something, all right, like come on little girl, you gotta go, like we got stuff to do. Same thing with food. I'm like, girl, have you eaten your vegetables today? Have you eaten some fruit today? Have you, I don't care what junk food you ate, because I know some people feel like, oh, I ate this and I don't have room in my belly or whatever to eat. But yes, you do. If you can eat a cheeseburger, you can eat a cup of some green beans to go with it. So that's like,
Yeah.
it's literally, sometimes I think with ADHD especially, we can get really hung up on like what is the right thing to eat, or like when is the best time to do this. And that's when we do our research and I found you should eat this at this time and blah blah blah. Like at the end of the day, you have to think on a very basic level.
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to survive? Because I would like to
Mm-hmm.
survive. Um, and go from there, because when you take care of your body, the effects mentally will follow. And a lot of people try to do like nutrition hacks for ADHD, like if you eat this, you'll be able to focus, or don't eat this because you won't be able to focus. That's fine, but some stuff works for some people and some stuff doesn't work for those same people.
Right.
So you have to really figure out what works for you.
Right.
And also like pay attention to your habits seasonally. Like you said, in the fall I like to eat this, and the summer I like to eat this. It is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like figure out what your body wants and what you want, but also just what works for you and your personal goals.
Right.
That's really my advice
Definitely.
to anyone trying to figure out food and ADHD. So yeah.
Definitely. Now, real quick, did you want to talk about why you decided not to take medication for ADHD?
So yeah, I can answer that real quick. But basically I started out on ADHD meds. It was a stimulant, and I was on, it's a newer one called Sustenance, which is like, it's supposed to be like a smoother form of Adderall. And I actually really enjoyed Sustenance because at one point when I thought I wasn't going to take it, I tried Adderall. I literally tried everything. Nothing worked for me quite the same as that one. But eventually, like, I decided not to take it anymore because as a stimulant, like, it was affecting my blood pressure. And that is just something that I really wanted to get under control. And I never had blood pressure issues until I was on a stimulant. And I did try non-stimulant, and none of those also worked for me. So like at a certain point, I just had to go back to the drawing board and go back to like lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
Because you know that every time people say like, oh, work on your lifestyle habits, you're just like, go away. But no, literally like sleeping better has made all of the difference for me. I do move a lot more, like I get more physical activity than I used to. I pay attention to how much screen time I get. I wear my blue light glasses normally throughout the day. Like there's so many things and just little tricks that I've learned that work for ADHD now, that I feel like had I been on medication, I probably wouldn't have learned some of these things. And so this is not like, you know, to say team meds or team not meds. I was definitely team meds until the meds weren't team me. But I just found other ways and just things that work for me. And it just so happens that it worked out better for me to not be on medication. So that's my long story short on that one.
Yeah. For me, I didn't know that I mean, I knew I had ADHD ever since I was a little girl, but I didn't know the impact ADHD had on the rest of my life until I was about 22 and I was suffering the worst mental health issues that I had experienced of all time. I was majorly depressed, always anxious. So I started seeing a therapist and started on a journey with anxiety and depression medications. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I was 27 that I started going to a psych clinic and a medication management program because my doctor was fed up with me forgetting to take my medication. But so I went through, yeah, I mean, what can I say? I went through the gamut of, you know, all of the different types of depression, antidepressants, and anxiety medications that I could in order to find one that worked. And the one that wound up working the best for me was Wellbutrin. And at this point, my doctor stopped prescribing because by this time I was taking 3 medications for mental health. And generally, I mean, I was going to see my PCP for that sort of stuff. So she had me go to a medication management program at a psych clinic because that was the medical needs that I had. And it was a good decision. I was very upset with her, but it was a good decision for me because when I started seeing a psychiatric nurse practitioner, then we started discussing ADHD. So at first, I was being treated for bipolar disorder. And then when I went to my medication management program, my PNP said, I don't have bipolar disorder, I have ADHD. And I was like, well, of course I do. And she was like, no, but this is affecting this, and this is, and I was like, wow, all of this makes so much more sense than bipolar. And so up until that point, I was making up those tricks that would help for me to get through life. So like with reading, because I have some reading comprehension issues, and with sensitivities, light sensitivity and sensitivity to touch, I would come up with all of these ideas in order to get through my life, not knowing that all of those were related to hyperactivity and ADHD until I spoke to my psychiatric nurse practitioner. And I was still adamant about being on medication for ADHD because the Wellbutrin was good, but it wasn't enough. And it wasn't until I added atomoxetine, which is specifically used for ADHD, those two together has worked best for me. And the same, I encourage people, you don't have to take medication to treat ADHD, because a lot of people will experience symptoms of ADHD without it becoming a disorder.
Mm-hmm.
You can have sensitivity, you can have hyperactivity, you can have attention deficit without it causing an upheaval in your life or causing you to have what's it called? It was like there was a word in my head. Disorder. It was just disorder. Dysregulation. All of that stuff. So you can have those things without it causing some upheaval in your life and it becoming a disorder. But mine was becoming unmanageable without the medication. So there are times where I will forget to fill my prescription and I go a certain amount of time without it. And I've learned which medication is affecting what. So I think the Wellbutrin does well at helping with emotional dysregulation and with the depression symptoms, but the atomoxetine does best with keeping my mind going. So like we need a bunch of stimulants in order for us to pay attention. We need all of that stuff. So that's why we fidget, and that's why we tap, and that's why we make noises or we copy songs and all that stuff. All of that stuff helps us with keeping our minds going, staying busy so that we can continue to function. So at this moment, the medication works for me, and I'm testing to see my other friends who have ADHD who are taking stimulant medications, see how it affects them, because I want to at least try it, because I've stayed with this medication for the last couple of years and it's worked really well for me. But again, you don't have to take medication to treat ADHD. You can go about your life doing the tips, the hacks, the tricks that work best for you and your lifestyle. But it's true that making certain lifestyle changes does help. So like for me too, walking every day, I try my best to get up and walk every day. And having that at the start of my day kind of makes the rest of my day fall in line. So like I know after I go for my walk and I do my prayer, my Bible reading and some work, then I go take a shower and get ready for the rest of my day. You know, I feel ready to get that going. And then choosing good, healthy foods, good, healthy brain foods, is a great way to keep your body regulated, which will in turn keep your emotions regulated, which people with ADHD have a hard time with. So it is tiring to hear certain lifestyle changes is what's going to help you, but it's true. It's absolutely true that when you prioritize your sleep and your health, you are prioritizing your mental health, and it helps when you have ADHD. Mm-hmm. Drinking more water. My gosh, drink more water.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I need some.
I always carry my water bottle with me. But one thing I've noticed I do a lot more recently is if somebody says water, I just go ahead and pick up my water. Like when you said that, I was like, okay.
I saw that.
Because like there was one point where I was like really good at it. I think this thing is like 24 ounces. So if I drank 4 in a day, I would have the amount of water that I needed. So I would have one of these on my way to work, and then I would pee when I get to work.
Yeah.
And I would have one of these and try to finish it by like 2:00. And then I would have to try to finish my third one before I get home because I have a long drive. Mm-hmm. And then once I got home, I only had one more to go. Right. And I would drink half of it for dinner and the other half throughout the night before I go to bed. Yeah. And water has improved my life so much. Sunlight and water, like we really are plants, which is so crazy because kind of like you said, even though I don't do like morning activity outside, I always sit outside in the morning to get my sunlight. And the more that I started doing that, I started to see the benefits just in my everyday life, but also like managing my ADHD symptoms, but especially during the winter and the colder months when it's like you need that extra vitamin D. So those lifestyle changes, like do not underestimate them. Like you are spot on with that.
The other balance is important when we're talking about nutrition and food for your brain is knowing what you're deficient in. So like for me, I know that I'm deficient in vitamin D, and most Black people will be deficient in vitamin D. Vitamin B also helps and vitamin C helps, but you don't want to take too much of those sort of supplements. So I do go to my doctor just to find out where I am deficient, and I will add, so like during the wintertime, I generally have to do vitamin D and iron during that time. And having a balance of those supplements is very helpful. You don't have to overload them. It's not going to be like vitamins are going to be the cure-all for ADHD, but definitely finding out where you're deficient and meeting those levels with medication or with a certain diet or whatever, those things will help as well.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we did this. I do want to end with something positive that you think every person with ADHD should know.
Okay, so this one, this is not necessarily related to food and ADHD,
Sure.
but it's a good one, right? It's an old one. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix
Of
it.
course.
Like,
Of course. If it works for you, there's nothing that needs to change. Nothing.
Yeah.
The major thing, a lot of my friends have been finding out that they have ADHD. Some people I didn't expect. They usually have inattentive ADHD. Like I can relate to someone who has hyperactive ADHD because we have the same issues. We experience the same things. But I can never catch somebody who has inattentive ADHD. And a lot of my friends have been finding out that they do. But I think what the encouragement I have given is not only is every day day one. Every day can be day one. If you messed up today, you can start again tomorrow. That's something I encourage. But the second thing I encourage is when you find out you have ADHD, you're not finding out anything new. You're only putting a name to it. That's it. This has been your whole life. This has been your problem ever since you were little, because it generally starts with the adaptation of your brain. And since then, it's been your same issue. The only thing you find out when you go to a therapist or see a psychiatric nurse practitioner is the name for it. That's it. Nothing else has changed about you.
Yeah,
that's something I encourage
really,
people.
Really great advice, because one thing I talk to people a lot about is life after diagnosis, because it can be really easy to like become addicted to like all of the literature about ADHD. And there are so many, especially on social media, there's so many influencers and so many people who are kind of newer to the space of talking about ADHD. And I'm not trying to say like what people are doing is good or bad, but I've definitely seen some rhetoric about ADHD that I don't appreciate, especially being that like, okay, yes, it is something that they may have found out about themselves recently. Like you said, they put a name to it finally. But like some people can get out of hand. So some people can really get out of hand. So I would, yeah, it's one of those things, like you said, like nothing has changed about you. You're the same exact person you were before and during and after diagnosis. So yeah, that is beautiful. I love that you said that.
Thank you. I might put that somewhere. Put it on a t-shirt or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It has been a pleasure. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for
that's everything. Yeah, for sure. And usually I put videos that I might make on Instagram. I put them on YouTube. So we can talk about that later. But
okay.
Where can we find you?
You all can find me on the interwebs as Busy Bee with ADHD. That is my Instagram name. That is my TikTok. That's my YouTube channel. My website is busybeewithadhd.com. So you can find all of the other things that I do, because it's way too many.
Yeah.
But yes, that's me. That's where to find me. And I appreciate you for sharing your community with me, Jazz.
Absolutely. And you can find me at Hyperactive Jazz on most socials. Most of the time, I post videos about the lifestyle of ADHD and how to manage it on YouTube. So I'll see you over there. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us.